Yo, Wolfpack, and welcome to a very special video about a game where my hype level is through the roof. Now, it's Batman Arkham Shadow, if you haven't guessed. It's not quite the first Batman game in VR, but based on what I played, it is definitely going to be the best. Now, I was lucky enough to travel to the Meta offices in Bellevue, Washington, right outside of Seattle, where I got to meet with the developers and get my hands on this game. So today I'm going to tell you about my short experience playing a slice of the game, as well as a Q&A that I had with the developers here at Camouflage. They're great. But we're going to start with the game. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to record anything in the actual headset, but they did provide some B-roll footage of the exact level that I was playing, and you're also going to see me stomping around in their office wearing the Quest headset while I was playing the game, beating down people, and getting very sweaty. Now, the demo provided was about 40 minutes long, and it takes place very early in the game, pretty much right after the introduction. Now, in the timeline, Arkham Shadow comes right after Arkham Origins. So we're playing as a young Batman, suave, debonair, and throughout the game, we're gonna see the development of villains that haven't quite hit their stride yet. People like Harley Quinn and Harvey Dent, and I think you know who they eventually become. But the main focus of the game is on the Rat King, and in this demo, we explore the sewers beneath Gotham, areas swarming with rats, rat masks, and rat graffiti. It's basically Ratatouille, but really evil down there. As the demo starts, we're dropped at the entrance to these sewers, a dock right next to a quiet river. Immediately, and I mean immediately, you feel like you have stepped into an Arkham game. The graphics, and remember, this game is exclusive to the Quest 3, are pretty dang outstanding. You can tell why they needed that extra processing power. You have the entire body of Batman at your disposal, and even shifting left or right, and that might have been opposite, will reveal your cape. It kind of comes around behind you, so you got the entire thing. Now, Batman's arms, which you're gonna be seeing like the entire time, look incredible. And moving them around, clenching your fists, it really is a joy. The environment itself glows from various fires around the levels, and just looking at it as a room, it looks great, incredible. Now, when you get up close to the walls of the fires, you can see the concessions that had to be made for a standalone headset, but it's nothing that's ever gonna draw you away from an experience, unless you're, studying every single crack for a flaw. As a whole, looks really good. You're going to be very impressed. Anyone that was worried about the questization of an Arkham game is going to have their fears dissolved very quickly. Now, as we move through the sewers, you're going to get your basic tutorials, right? So Batman has a lot of tools for traversal. You have your basic joystick for movement, button press for crouching, and even dodges to the left and right. I think I did it right that time. Now, one tool you're going to be using constantly is the grappling hook, which you don't actually pull out and hold, but instead you press a button and it comes automatically out of your glove, launching you to wherever you want to go. So it pulls you there and then it retracts back into your glove. It's kind of a bummer that I couldn't hold it, but it makes sense. They want it to be a quick option for moving around levels, and if you were fumbling around your batsuit looking for it, it would make for some really awkward gameplay. So that as a movement thing makes sense. Now, also in the demo, we had the Batarang, which you rip out of your chest, which is awesome. And then smoke grenades, which spawn on your left gauntlet in the bottom middle, that you can also pull out, and you can see the mechanics of them as they reload. It's really cool. Now, I didn't use these too much, but anyone that's played the Arkham game knows that they're gonna have their uses. They can stun enemies, cutting distant wires with the Batarang, or escaping dangerous situations by throwing the smoke grenade. Now, continuing along through these sewers after our tutorials, we're gonna find some branching paths, and some of those will lead us to hidden collectibles, which was my favorite thing in the Arkham games. You guys remember the Riddler trophies? Now, they don't have those, but the two that I found were radios that you can rip from the wall, and rat statues that you then shatter in order to collect. I've always loved rewarding exploration, and Batman Arkham Shadow promises many of these secret paths with more collectibles than just those two for you to find. Now, eventually we hit our first combat section, and I'm sure that this is the part of the game that has some people, somewhat worried. Combat in the Arkham series is the bread and the butter of what makes the game unique and endlessly fun. Batman is a slow fighter based around dodging and counters to find the perfect moment to take down the enemy. Well, I can say this much. The controls feel about as good as you can possibly make it in VR. It really does feel like the Arkham style of fighting. Now, the developer said that the key to realizing this combat is that Batman doesn't walk to his enemy. He punches his way across the room instead. So when you punch toward an enemy, literally, in Arkham Shadow, you dash toward them, getting you in range to unleash your blows. Now, you can flail and throw tons of punches, but it's not going to be effective whatsoever. Instead, you have to look out for certain combo indicators. Arrows, which can tell you which direction you need to punch from, so, left, right? And then there's also circles, which will tell you exact positions to hit. Meanwhile, if an enemy's attacking, you can punch back against their attack to counter them, and then time will slow down, allowing you to get more blows in. When you get this rhythm down, the fighting feels almost like Beat Saber, hitting the notes in the right direction with the right timing. It is very satisfying. One thing that I did struggle with was punching too fast. Look, I wanted to lay into my enemies. I am Batman, after all. But as Batman, you need more oomph behind your punches, right? There's definitely a rhythm to the fights, and you can't just go full speed expecting to win. Now, Batman, well, he never fights just a single enemy, okay? It's always groups, always these thugs who want to attack you with their friends. So while you're fighting one enemy, another is undoubtedly circling around behind you to hit you. When they're about to strike, a blue indicator is going to appear on the side of the screen, allowing you to lift your arm and throw a counter. It's going to spin you in that direction. The enemy will be knocked back, and then you begin your attack on them. It's a very musical flow, and it kind of becomes a dance. So you land your blows on one enemy, counter another one that's coming from behind, beginning combat with them, then you counter someone else, so on, so forth, until everybody is knocked out around you. Now, it does take a moment to get used to this, but once you find that correct speed and realize that it's better to fight off attacks than to funnel yourself into just one of the opponents, the battles feel excellent. They really do. Eventually, you're going to begin to integrate your devices into combat too. Stunning with the Batarang, getting space with the explosive gel, etc., etc. And you also have your finishing combos, jumping onto fallen foes, beating them down, hitting them with two hands. You break some knees when people try to kick you. You can throw enemies in the air and then kick them. I mean, it's got the whole Batman shebang, and it feels and looks excellent. And trust me, it really makes you sweat. I only played 40 minutes of this game, and I was dripping, but I was desperate for more goons to beat down. But it's Batman, okay? And straight up fighting isn't always the answer. Sometimes Batman needs to cloak himself in shadows and take out his enemies stealthily, one at a time. Now, to help you with this, you have your Bat Vision, which you tap your little head and it turns the world purple, highlighting enemies and objectives in yellow, even allowing you to see through walls. Sneaking up behind an enemy allows you to choke them out silently. Standing on a ledge above an enemy lets you grab them with your grappling hook, push them or punch them off the edge, and then they dangle there, unconscious above their friends. It's something that everyone who's played an Arkham game expects, and it's delivered here in VR perfectly. It feels so good, just a boom, and he just falls to the floor. Good stuff. Now, as we progressed further through the demo, we exited the sewers and went through a hospital until we reached the streets of Gotham. Fireworks were exploding overhead. We saw Jim Gordon in the distance, and as we glide toward him, you can glide by pulling out your cape, the demo ends. Man, oh man, did I want some more though? Now, at the end of this video, I will share the Q&A that myself and some other creators conducted with the developers, but I want to highlight a few points first. I was worried that most of this demo took place in the sewers, right? It was a fairly linear level, and it's a game focused on the Rat King. Now, I didn't want to spend all our time somewhere dark and enclosed like the sewers, but it turns out that is the only time in the entire game that you actually go to the sewers. So there is going to be a ton of different environments to explore and different enemies to face. You're not going to feel like you're just going through the same progression over and over. Now, I also asked about the length and the scope of the game. Now, look, the North Star for the developers of Arkham Shadow is Arkham Asylum, one of the best entries in the entire series. But like that game, this isn't going to be a giant open world to explore. There is a central hub, which will branch out into different parts of Gotham, and each area kind of has its own little dungeon where you find new things, fight bosses, all that stuff. So there is exploration, and there's going to also be plenty of secret paths, and you're going to be backtracking. When you get a new gadget, you're going to find areas that you couldn't get to before in previous spots that you were at. Now, as for the length of the game, I expect it to be somewhere around Arkham Asylum length, which clocked in for most players around like 10, 11 hours. Now, of course, if you have, an army of collectibles to find, a complete run will take you much longer. But for a VR game just kind of dipping its toes into this universe, I think that's pretty darn good. So my overall impression is amazingly positive. This is an Arkham game through and through, and you feel like Batman come to life. The little touches and details, the combat, the graphics, the environment, it all combined into an excellent experience where I truly became the Batman, which I also said like every 3 minutes while I was playing the demo. Batman. So I'm going to leave you now with the full Q&A that we had with the developers. They gave some really interesting answers, so stay tuned for that. Guys, I want you to be excited because I really think they nailed this game. I'm so excited for it, and it is coming out very soon in October. Can't wait to cover it. All right, stay tuned for the Q&A. See you in a bit.
I'm Ryan Payton. I'm the director of Arkham Shadow and the studio head of Camouflage.
Yeah, I'm Ryan Darcy, the design director on Arkham Shadow.
I'm Aaron Whiting. I'm the head of production here at Camouflage and on Arkham Shadow.
I'm Jay Bratt, VR YouTuber, and if you're here, you probably already know who I am.
I'm Jeff, Wolf in VR.
Rachel, or Otherworldly.
Mateo 311.
So you guys made Iron Man VR, a very well-respected and entertaining superhero game. What lessons from that can you immediately apply to Batman?
Well, it's in a lot of ways, Batman Arkham Shadow couldn't be more different than our previous title, Iron Man VR. We're on the ground. I think it's a lot more of a thoughtful, methodical experience. That's melee combat focused, investigations, a different locomotion set with the grapple, and giving players the freedom to roam around Gotham City with a very different set of tools at their disposal. So in a lot of ways, we've had to kind of just start from scratch from a VR perspective. But thankfully, we have the existing Arkham titles to look at for inspiration. That was always been our North Star whenever we got in trouble. So, but in terms of like things that we've learned from our previous title that we brought along, I think one is the importance of having that full body avatar, allowing players to see the gauntlet and your chest plate and all the way down to your legs with Batman. I think the importance of that, and in a lot of our learning lessons, I think when it comes to like Rocket Punch and the way that like the phonetic nature of Iron Man worked, and some of those lessons that were applied to our combat in Arkham Shadow. And do you want to add on top of that,
yeah, sure.
Ryan Darcy?
Yeah, so the whole seed for the combat in Arkham Shadow was planted in Iron Man. I guess I should look this way.
Hi.
Yeah, and if you've played Iron Man, we have a rocket punch there, which kind of sends you flying across the city, and then you can chain that 3 times and hit a few enemies. And just that action in Iron Man felt so good, and I always imagined, on an Iron Man 2, fleshing that out some more and adding a little bit more kind of visceral, like up close combat in Iron Man, and then when we got the opportunity to the potential opportunity to work on Arkham, and Peyton was telling me about it. He was super excited about the potential of working with that IP. We're both huge Batman fans and Arkham fans, and so were many on the team. And but Peyton was like, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do the combat in VR. And I said, dude, it's no problem. Like, Peyton's like, well, how are we gonna get Batman, like, in the heat of combat? You're just gonna like walk over there and hit the analog stick. And I was like, dude, Batman doesn't walk across the room; he punches across the room. And so making sure that we were baking the locomotion into the combat was super important. And there's some of that in Iron Man with the ground pound as well. And then from there, it goes into the kind of stealing some of the time dilation from super hot in order to orchestrate combos that are based on Beat Saber. We pulled from our personal experience with Iron Man and the other like high profile VR titles that seemed to just fit for the Arkham combat experience. So anyway, I took a bit of a tangent there, but yeah. Oh, the one thing I could say about the original question as well, like what did we learn about working on Iron Man, and what do we bring to Batman? I think other than the rocket punch from a mechanical standpoint, just leaning into the IP when you have a problem, and saying how does Iron Man solve this in the comic books or in the films, right? And it's twofold. It stays true to the IP, and then it also, players come in with an expectation of things working a certain way because they know the superhero. And so if you're able to just lean into the IP, the way that Iron Man flies or shoots, it just works really well. And for us, there are many versions of Batman, but we're explicitly an Arkham title. And so looking at how the Arkham games did it, leaning into the IP. The first thing, I always say when the team would ask, how do we do X or Y? It's like, what do the previous Arkham games do? And if we can do it the exact same way in VR, do it that way. If we need to deviate because VR, then that's where our creative freedom came in, and where I think we landed something that is only possible on the Quest 3. So
on that notion of the Arkham series, based on what you guys told us and what I saw in practice, this is very much inspired by Arkham Asylum. How's it looking also in terms of scope compared to a game like that? I noticed there's a level system, so you're going to level up. It very much felt like Arkham Asylum in VR, but I'm wondering on scale, boss fights, stuff like that.
Yeah, in terms of the scope and scale of the game, I think Arkham Asylum is the closest equivalent we have within the franchise, and that's pretty intentional on our part. Yeah, in terms of game length, we're looking at something that's close to Arkham Asylum, definitely longer than Iron Man VR, maybe not as long as Asylum, but we're going to be somewhere in that kind of sweet spot, we think. And you probably noticed when you play the game, but yeah, we're pulling a lot of elements from Asylum, but also from the other Arkham titles as well. We're timeline-wise, we're a direct follow-up to Arkham Origins, so we're pulling a lot of elements from Arkham Origins. But I mean, there are features that only appear in City and Night that we pulled into our game where we felt was appropriate. But unlike City and Night, though, we're not fully open world. We're I think more of a kind of a focused game. But one thing that I'm excited for you once you get deeper into when you have the opportunity to play the full game and get your impressions on is seeing the game open up beyond what you played today. Because the opening is very intentionally quite linear in terms of giving players an opportunity to learn the core mechanics before we start opening up to more of Gotham City. And then about an hour or two beyond what you played, that's when we bring the player to our Arkham Asylum courtyard inspired space, in which all of the game's dungeons are connected, and that's where players are going to go through a multi-hour dungeon, unlock a gadget, use that gadget to go back to a previous dungeon, unlock new areas there. That's where I think the game starts to really open up and feel like a true Arkham Asylum inspired sequel.
Yeah, and gadgets is just what I wanted to add to. Are we expecting to see just stuff we've previously seen? Or is this game going to introduce some new gadgets we've kind of never really seen in the Arkham series?
So for Arkham Shadow, I think where we started was where Ryan Darcy was kind of talking about previously is we would look to Arkham and try to translate the mechanics that felt good for VR. So we kind of, that's where we started with. So grapple gun, smoke bombs, batarang. But as you might have noticed in our gameplay trailer, we're starting to kind of unravel or reveal more gadgets, including the bat claw, which you can use to pull vents off of walls, but also in combat and pull guys towards you and then clothesline them in a nice time dilation fashion. It's really cool. We showed off for the first time shock gloves, which is a fan favorite from Arkham Origins, and so that feels really terrific and different in VR than how it plays in Origins. And we also have our gel launcher, which was, I think, custom designed to work specifically and lean into the strengths of VR. So as for and we have other gadgets that we haven't announced yet, but as far as a brand new gadget that nobody's ever seen from the Arkham franchise, that really actually wasn't our approach. Our approach was to take, I think, the gadgets we felt were going to be most appropriate for VR, for our game, and then give the players the fantasy of being able to use those in VR.
There's been a lot of controversy about these big new IPs only going to Quest 3. Was it a tough discussion deciding to have to skip the Quest 2?
Yeah, for us, we've had this vision for Arkham Shadow for a number of years, and we knew that we definitely needed the power of the Quest 3 to not only deliver the size of the world that we wanted to create, but also to deliver at the fidelity of the assets that you got to see today with all the atmospherics and the real-time shadows. It was just that kind of full experience, our complete vision for the game that we felt that was going to be true to the franchise that millions of Arkham fans love. If we're going to stay true to that, it actually wasn't that hard of a decision, even though we know there's a lot of Quest 2 users out there that would love the game to be for Quest 2. We didn't feel like we should compromise the game's vision in order to hit that older hardware. So we've been all in on Quest 3 for a while now. And I think it's our jobs to, through this gameplay trailer and through eventual reviews and everything, is to show the world why this game is worth buying a Quest 3 for. That's really, like, I think, the burden that we have.
Just to add on to that a little bit, like one of the things that working on the Quest 3 allows us is to not have to lean on reprojection in order to hit this visual fidelity as well, right? We experimented with that, and the game just felt so different. You're sampling far fewer frames for all the gesture recognition, and you started dropping punches and dropping counters, and it was just like, we can't do this. It's not going to feel as responsive as we need it to be if we're going to be utilizing reprojection. So, straight 72 frames. We had to do it on Quest 3. So.
I know a lot of people, including myself, often have issues with motion sickness when playing VR, but I didn't experience that at all during this demo. So, like, what measures did you take to prevent that?
You want to take that? Yeah, I can take that one. It's great to hear, first of all. I mean, that's always the concern, especially when you've got a really dynamic game like Arkham, where you're kind of bouncing all over the place, grappling, gliding, right? That's a lot of first people's questions. Am I going to be sick if I play this, right? Am I going to be uncomfortable? I think the comment you had, we also got a lot in Iron Man as well. It's like, wow, like, how do I, like, why am I not feeling ill? Like, what's going on here? What are you guys doing? There's the simple things like, maintaining high frame rate, never rotating the player's camera outside of them rotating their own head. There's like very basic things that like will cause players to get ill. No, camera shake, stuff like that, right? But once you get beyond those basics, like, and I don't have any like science to back this up, but my feeling is the more strongly you can create a connection between what the player thinks they want to do and then the gesture that they do and then the game reacting in a way that they expect. Like, if you have that connection from your mind, body to the game, and everything kind of works the way you like it, your brain like is comfortable and you don't start getting overloaded and frustrated. And I think that adds to the comfort. And because I know I've played VR titles that there's not a lot of movement, but like, it's just not. It's not reacting the way I expect it to, and I start getting frustrated, and I feel like I need to get out of the headset. So that's my theory, but I don't really know. Yeah.
I think for us too, with coming out Iron Man, one of our learning lessons was just putting comfort at like first and foremost with all the decisions and designs we were making, and was something we were thinking about very, very early on in development. And with VR games, sometimes that can be something that comes a lot later after you've kind of built out the combat and the prototype or your gameplay. But I know for us, even very, very early on, it was like, hey, let's make sure things are performant. Let's make sure it's comfortable. Let's make sure it's smooth and make sure it feels good for our players, even at the prototype level. And I think that's gone a long way to really reinforce a lot of what we're doing. And it's always been something that's been just like top of mind for us throughout all of development.
You guys mentioned the high fidelity assets and everything that kind of makes you feel like you are in an Arkham game, which I thought you nailed. Yeah, I thought you felt like you stepped right into an actual Arkham game. My question for you is, we spent a lot of time in the sewers in this demo, and you're dealing with the Rat King, and I feel like you're going to spend a lot of time in sewers, but is there a good variety of locations? I don't want to be going through the same tunnel for 9 hours or however long. I liked when we walked into a bank, we walked into the actual city, saw this stuff. So is there going to be a varied, am I going to feel like I'm exploring all these cool places?
Yeah, I think you got to see a little bit of a tease of what to expect from the gameplay trailer, a pretty wide variety of locations, including I think Eagle Eye Arkham fans will probably notice some locales from Arkham Origins, including Blackgate Prison. So some outdoor environments. For us, it's been really top of mind to give the players a wide variety of environments to go through. The sewers environment that you went through early on in the game is, I can confirm exclusively today that that's the only sewers environment you're going to be going through in the game. So it's, our team did a great job with that. And it's like, hey, we go through it. You see the rat barracks. You get the sense of like these people that are living underneath the surface of Gotham. They're rising up and taking to the streets. And then that's it. And we're moving on to a different biome. And so it's really important for us that the players feel like they're going on an adventure, on a journey, and that we're flexing the muscles of this incredible team that we have. And so you're going to see a wide variety of environments. And I also want to use this opportunity to talk about the dungeons, which I think is a really key part of the game.
You mentioned that word earlier, dungeons, which sounds much more high fantasy than it does like Batman kind of grounded, like sword and shield type stuff. What are dungeons? Yeah,
sorry, it's maybe it's more of like dev speak than I realized at the time. But like when you think back to some of at least some of my favorite areas of within the Arkham franchise, such as like the museum environment from Arkham City, where that kind of Penguin resides, there is a lot of kind of Zelda inspired level design that we've picked up on from the Rocksteady games in particular, where you enter a space, you've got some obvious blockers, and you are moving through a big environment, but that's contained, in which, midway through you unlock a gadget, and then you can use that gadget to then go and explore further, and you've got a big boss fight at the end. And we have a number of those kinds of what we call dungeons throughout the games, throughout the game. That is, I think, where the game really starts to breathe, and it feels like a true Arkham game. It's some of my favorite moments in the game, and those have taken literally years of iteration, working with our colleague Bill Green, who we brought him over from. He shipped all the games over at Rocksteady, all the Arkham games, and then he left after being a lead on Arkham VR and joined Camouflage. But before he joined Camouflage, he had questions for us like, how the heck are you guys doing Arkham Combat in VR? And when we had him play, he was like, okay, you guys figured it out. I want to join the team. And it's just been an absolute education working with him, learning what Rocksteady, like the Rocksteady way in terms of how grapple points work, how sights of lines work. And it only unlocked about a year and a half ago for both Bill and I, as we're working on these dungeons, as we're iterating on the game world, the importance of flow, which has always been a big part of the Arkham games, but in VR, the magic, the trick that we figured out, and it took us a while, was that we're not going to require the player, with some exceptions, we're not going to require the player to do 90-degree turns. We're going to design the whole level, all the levels, all the dungeons around 45-degree turns, so only one button click, right, on the right stick. And when you do that, it makes everything feel so much more, like, it just flows so much better. It requires a lot of work to kind of make everything like that flow and feel really good. But those are kind of like this, like the work that's gone into making sure that it feels like an authentic game, an authentic Arkham game built for VR.
I was curious if during this process there was anything that you wanted to include but just didn't work, or you had to cut back, or, performance-wise, the Quest couldn't handle it. Was there anything you had to cut from this game?
I mean, we've cut a lot of content, and it's not because it wasn't going to run on the Quest 3. It was actually us fully embracing the Bill Green development method that he grew up in over at Rocksteady, which is what he calls bold iteration. And what that meant was, unlike Iron Man, where we would build a level and we just kind of would just refine that level for a couple of years. Bill would come in and say, hey, no, we have to rethink the way that we're building these games. We're going to make this big dungeon, and then we're going to go and we're going to play the whole thing. And we're going to hook up all the encounters, all the designs, and we're going to play through it as a team, and then we're going to tear it apart. And then we know what we're going to do for the next few months? We're going to do it again, all the way from scratch. And it really forced our team to improve their tools, improve their mindset, that this is how you build an authentic Arkham game. And at first it was very, very painful for us. But on the flip side, I think we got so used to it that we started just being so willing to throw out content as we're going through, that about a year ago, we're like, okay, we got to stop throwing out content, and we got to just take what we have, which is really, really good. And now we've been, for the last year or so, obviously finish up the content, now focusing on polish and bug fixes.
As a producer, that process can be a little terrifying. No surprise, right? Because I love predictability and all that. But it was awesome process to see and really yielded results. And I was a little skeptical at first, of like, how's this going to work, and are we going to be able to pull this off? And it was really awesome to see that every time we did an iteration, we'd learn a little bit more, as Ryan alluded to, like, oh, let's we got to focus on 45-degree turns, not 90-degree turns, and we'd see the team just move a little bit faster and a little bit faster, and you'd see those iterations get quicker and quicker, and it was so impressive. We were able to, in that sewers demo you played through, we had some revisions we did earlier this year that we took it from basically a gray box to an all the way arted up VFX encounters working in like 3 weeks, which was impressive. And I'm really.
Sewers do you think we've built?
Oh my God, we've rebuilt that, built that so many times, probably at least 4 or 5 times at least. Yeah. But every time you can tell it gets a little better, gets a little more authentic, feels a little bit more Arkham, and you can tell the team's getting more and more excited and engaged and understands, like, okay, this is how an Arkham game is built.
Adding on to what you guys were saying, talking about this new process of how you reiterate, I think that was very apparent. I mean, we only played a short demo, but it feels like compared to Iron Man, which was a great game that I truly enjoyed, it feels like your studio's matured. Like it feels like, you know, we're pushing that AAA quality now in terms of game development. And probably one of the biggest thing I noticed is people are always looking for a specific game in VR, and it never translates right. You guys somehow figured out, you know, combat and stuff, and making you actually feel like you're in the Arkham world. So that right there was really impressive. No question, I just, you know.
I feel like you guys are itching to talk about combat. And I think that's going to be people's kind of biggest concern with this is, you know, it's a big chunk of the actual gameplay of the game is throwing punches. And what we played in 45 minutes, I was sweating. I don't know about you guys. Yeah. It's a workout. It's really fun. But how is that going to vary over the course of a very long game? I know we had some limited combos that we were throwing. We haven't really been able to use tools and stuff. So I'm sure it opens up like crazy as you go along. But like I know at one point like you're pulling people like physically down to bring up your knee and smash them in the face. At one point some guy kicked me and I broke his knee with my fist, which was incredible, but it only happened like once. And like I want to see like tons more of that unique kind of combat stuff. So please open up, tell us about the combat.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like the previous Arkham titles, at the foundation, you know, the base level is strikes and counters, right? And finding that rhythm between strike, 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 counter. The counters are an attempt to break the player's rhythm, and it's a test to make sure they're paying attention. And it's never about fighting a single enemy as Batman unless it's a boss. You know, it's that spinning plate gameplay fighting multiple enemies. So after you kind of knock an enemy down, do I want to lunge in for a ground takedown? Am I safe? Am I going to get hit when I go to do that? Or should I take this guy out first, right? And so that decision point between enemies is really where we start to explore more variety. And that's where you're going to want to open up and use, you know, your gadget. So you grab your batarang, throw that, stun that guy, grab your bat claw, you know, pull the weapon out of that guy's hand, you know, explosive gel, knock these guys down. You know, learning to use the gadgets in combat is where I think it really starts to expand. Much like the previous titles as well, like at a baseline, you don't need to master that. Like that's built into the combo system. You start getting more XP, you start getting more upgrades, which you know then opens up new takedowns and new abilities. And so, yeah, the bosses are the opportunities to push a lot more outside of that core combat as well. So the bosses will require gadgets, and you know further enemies, the enemy roulets, they require new moves. So there's cape stun in there, which you guys could do in your demo, but you know we didn't tutorialize it yet because you didn't need to use it yet. But you know, our armored enemies are going to require that, just like the previous titles. And you know some enemies are going to require redirect, which is running and jumping up over an enemy and then attacking them from behind. So
knife guys,
knife enemies that require kind of head dodges. You know, so it's again leaning into VR to do something similar that the Arkham games did. You would have to hold back on the stick and kind of, you know, the Batman would bob and weave, but like you're actually bobbing and weaving instead of just holding back on the stick, right? So really it's a combination of gadget usage, you know, progression, upgrades, and then new enemies and bosses that are testing a variety of skills.
I'll give it to you guys in a second. I'm just so excited about this. I know it's a very deliberate combat system. Like hit this specific point, come this specific direction. One thing I noticed when I was playing that I got a lot of too fast because I felt like I was getting into it. I was getting used to it. I'm like, oh, I know what this means now. Is that always going to stay? Is there any option to kind of dial up so you can get used to it and fight a little bit faster?
Yeah. The too fast is an interesting one, right? Because like wrong location or wrong direction, it's like you kind of get it, right? If it's being a little bit more orchestrated, you know, taking that Beat Saber, you know, strike here in this direction with this hand, like that's kind of the foundation. The too fast is an interesting one, and you know it might just require a little bit more fine tuning. But one of the things, okay, so you know if you were to get in a fight, let's say you're at a bar having a drink, and
happens all the time.
Some dude rolls up and he's like, I don't like your face, right? And like your initial instinct is just to kind of go crazy and just flail, right? But like that's not how Batman fights. And so the whole idea is this isn't like a Batman simulation. It's not a physics-based system. It's trying to deliver on the fantasy of being Batman. So just like in the previous titles, you know, when Batman's going from enemy to enemy, you've got that rhythmic like punch, punch, punch. And so we wanted to recreate that in VR. And so if you mash the button in the Arkham games, you don't punch every time you mash the button. It only registers on that rhythmic hit. And if you actually manage to hit it on that rhythmic hit, you get crit. And so like that's kind of the foundation of the Arkham combat. So to us, this was a decision to stay true to the IP, And there are other games out there, Blade and Sorcery, that fully simulated physics-based system. That shit's cool. I like that. But like that's not what Arkham is, and that's not what we're going for. So obviously, like, we can't wait to see what fans think of it, and whether or not it's actually fun. We think we do. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback, but it's a slightly different approach, something that we hope has mass appeal as well. Yeah.
I mean, even in the first combat, I never felt like I had to mash buttons or swing my fist. Like, it felt deliberate from the get-go, which is great.
And the Arkham community you reference is absolutely massive, and tons of them are really excited to see another Arkham title being able to get immersed in VR. But there is a group that are pretty disappointed they're not going to be able to play it another way. What would you say to those people?
In terms of being able to play it on another VR platform,
The
or
people who don't have VR that are
just like
disliking the trailer, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to Arkham fans who have been waiting since 2016 for a new Arkham game, and Arkham Shadow may not be on the platform that they wanted to come out on. And hey, I want more Arkham titles as well, so I'm kind of with them. Like, I'll be in line for the next Arkham game on a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox or a PC along with them. But for us, when we got the call to work on Arkham Shadow, we knew that this was going to be a Quest 3 exclusive game, and our mission is very clear as a first-party studio within Meta, which is our jobs are to create the very best games for the platform that show off the hardware, the visuals, the audio, to create unforgettable experiences that really leverage the unique power of VR, and to leverage this incredible IP that we have. And we actually look at it as just an incredible opportunity to bring hopefully a lot more people into the world of Quest and the ecosystem, so they hopefully buy the hardware to play the game. And the good thing about the Quest ecosystem now in 2024 is that once they're done playing Arkham Shadow, they've got so much other content to celebrate and play, which is something that I think we just don't talk enough about, like the celebrating all the dozens and dozens and dozens of terrific titles in the hardware as well. So I actually I'm really proud of the game that we're making, and I'm also really excited to bring more people into the ecosystem, because I think there's so much more to celebrate these days.
I think if any of those people go demo this, they're going to buy a Quest 3 on the spot. Getting in that universe just felt so good.
Yeah, it did feel right and natural. But what I wanted to ask about was just replayability. So you're going to play through the single-player game. We're probably going to love it, enjoy it. Maybe it's 8 hours, 10 hours. But then how many times are you going to replay it? Are you anything like challenges that we've seen in the Arkham series that you could just go in, try and take down as many guys as possible? Like any scenario like that?
Yeah, but we've internally we have like things that kind of replicate challenge maps where we're kind of competing for high scores, and we love doing stuff like that too. Whether or not that's going to make it into the ship product is something that we're actually actively like focusing on right now. But all of our attention right now, with the exception of kind of investigating those kinds of things, is making sure that the main campaign is as good as possible from start to finish. So in terms of replayability, I think you can expect to have as much replayability as the other Arkham titles, which I'm surprised. I guess I'm not surprised now, because I've been living in this world for many years. But when I started working on this game, I was surprised at the degree at which people are still playing the Arkham games after how many years. And now that I'm so just like neck deep in it all, I get it now too. So we're just trying to build our game to be, so we want 8 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, people are still playing Arkham Shadow and finding new things and really loving as much as they love the previous Arkham games up until this point.
So when I was playing the demo, I was, exploring every single brick and stuff. And you guys definitely have these little secret areas and a ton of collectibles. One of my favorite parts of the Arkham series was the Riddler trophies. These just really unique, fun puzzles to find nothing that matters in the actual game, but stuff that you feel really good about finding. So I know you have collectibles in the game, but how much more is there that like is off the beaten path?
Yeah, so we have lots off the beaten path, lots of collectibles. We don't have Riddler trophies in our game. We have these. We have a wide variety of collectible types, but the two that you experience today are the rat idols and the rat radios, and those rat radios will be I think harder to find, and those can be blocked oftentimes behind puzzles. We actually removed some of the puzzles from the demo for you today, just so we didn't have people get stuck on puzzles. But you found you didn't find some of like the more hardcore kind of Riddler inspired puzzles that require a batarang for a switch to go into Detective Vision and those kinds of things. Those are that's also our big focus right now in the game and in the final months of development. in addition to balancing out all their encounters and everything, is like adding a lot of those kind of Riddler-inspired puzzles throughout the game. And then, yeah, like I said, about a half dozen or other additional collectible types throughout the world, because I don't think it'd be an Arkham game without many, many, many things to collect.
I think the only thing we're really waiting to see, like you've delivered the combat, we believe in the combat now, is the storyline.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't get any glimpse of the storyline. How would you say it compares in terms to like Iron Man? Is it a deeper, longer story, or?
Yeah, I think in terms of story inspiration, we obviously like built off of our learnings from Iron Man VR and telling, I think, a real personal story focused on our hero. And we very much intentionally chose this phase in Batman's career, pretty early on in his career, to give him plenty of room to grow. And I think we're really challenging who Batman's all about in this game. And we have this wide cast of incredible characters from the DC universe that are going to be joining in the game world, including Harleen Quinzel and Dr. Crane, who becomes Scarecrow, and Harvey Dent and Commissioner Gordon. We showed off during our at Gamescom. We showed off Lockup for the first time, one of our big villains in the game. We have Arnold Wesker and Woody as and Ratcatcher, these kind of hardcore Arkham characters that have never been given like the proper day in the spotlight up until now with Arkham Shadow. So lots of great characters, but at the heart of it, the two things I'm most proud about this game is the combat and is the story we're telling. And we knew we were onto something pretty special when we had these incredible actors coming back into the Arkham verse through Arkham Shadow, such as Troy Baker, Roger Craig Smith, and seeing them on the stage who are reprising, well, not necessarily reprising the roles, but they're working together again for the first time since Arkham Origins, right? When Troy was playing Joker and Roger was playing Batman, obviously, and just seeing them get really into the story and seeing people on the set who are like part of the crew like crying and being really emotionally impacted by what we're doing. It was something really special. And I think you can tell, I've been working on games for almost 20 years now, going back to Metal Gear Solid 4. And there are moments in that project I remember where people would just get really quiet in a good way. Like they can tell there's something special happening on the stage. And we've had a number of those moments on this game where all credit goes to our writing team and Warner Brothers and DC for their guidance and their trust in us to tell something that is pretty hard hitting. So I stand by the story that we're telling. I can't wait to see what people say and what they do and how they react to some of these moments in the game.
Do I get to drive the Batmobile?
No vehicles in the game. Sorry, no vehicles in the game. No vehicles in the game.
Are there any surprises in store that people just aren't going to be expecting? Obviously, you're not going to reveal anything.
I won't tell you what the surprises are, but it wouldn't be an Arkham game without lots of surprises. In fact, it's very different than the opening of Arkham Knight, but we took inspiration from Arkham Knight, where if you remember, the first scene in Arkham Knight's pretty surprising. You're like, what the heck is going on here? This is crazy. And so we have our own kind of take on that with our game. So we start everything off with a surprise, and then we just ask the players to hold on for dear life all the way through the whole campaign.
And y'all started right after the surprise. So
of course.
Missed it. I'll be totally honest. When we got here today, some of us, the gameplay trailer hadn't come out yet. We hadn't seen it yet. So I was maybe a little on the fence. And I think doing the demo, you convinced me. So thank you for bringing us out here.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting us test it and getting us all sweaty. And we have to stay in the office here all day after that. But I think it was really awesome. I'm really stoked for it now. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. No, it's been our pleasure. And we've been waiting for this moment for close to 4 years, right? Having you all come in and play. And we've been building this game in large part for you specifically and for your community. We're just obsessed with VR. We're obsessed with Arkham, and we're obsessed with making great titles. And so, it means a lot to us that you'd make the trek out here and play our game, and be patient with us, because what you played today is still work in progress. And just trust that we're going to do everything we can over the next few months to make it as good as possible.
Make sure everyone on your team knows. Huge thank you. It's amazing. It's really come along. The people we didn't get to meet here today, please make sure and extend your thanks
we'll
from all
definitely
of
let
us.
them know.
Thank you.
They've been really curious to know how today goes, so we'll definitely let them know. Thank you.